our full thoughts with the BNR.
Next on Eternal Dirtals.
Hello, everybody. Eternal Dirtals is celebrating Bandmas this year by posting an episode every single weekday in December. That means like 20 episodes. As you can imagine, it is a gigantic lift for me. If you can support the channel by going to patreon.com/eternaldirtles, for the low price of $5, you'll be getting an episode every single weekday in December, free of charge. That's just going to happen either way. And you'll be getting ad-free content and a bonus episode every week. So if you can do that, that's great. Thanks for watching. On with the show. Hello and welcome to Eternal Dirtles. I'm your host, Zach Clark, and with me as always, Phil Blechman. Phil, how's it going, man?
Hey, Zach, is the Splinter Twin unban in Modern suggestive that the next card that they're going to unban that everybody has wanted for at least, a decade at this point, since his Divining Top in Legacy?
Could be. It could be. Same era, banned for format diversity reasons as opposed to tournament time reasons.
Well, we know that tournament time reasons is a little hoarse.
Yeah.
Because they left Nadu in the format. They could have gotten rid of Nadu. Decided to leave Nadu, Zach. I mean, are we hopping right in?
Oh man, we're getting there. We're getting there for sure. I mean, we're gonna have a lot of takes on this episode. Fuller takes than what we saw in our gut reactions video for positive. But before we get into all that, Phil and I both had like a pretty solid week in Magic the Gathering, and I wanted to go over that real fast. If you're, if you want to hear about the ban restrictions, you can find all that stuff in the comments and whatnot, and find out where the timing is for that. But you watch the episode, you follow along with us. You want to see what we're up to, and Phil, you recently had a pretty solid showing at the local.
Yeah, I had a 3-1 at the local, and there are some cards that I want to talk about when we get to the specifics that were said in the BNR announcement. Mm-hmm. Particularly the line that, if anybody hasn't heard our gut reactions, our first reactions when we first saw the bans, which is just the audio. We just sort of hopped on amidst our work days and gave our takes of what we saw, what we were expecting, what we got. And one of the things that you had pointed out was how in the legacy portion of the BNR, they talked about how free Countermagic is, quote, the glue that holds the format together. The glue. They Dan Musser straight up says the glue
Pillar
that holds
of
the format.
Yeah.
So because that is the closest thing we've gotten to a bedrock statement as to where the format buoys itself is, free Countermagic is the glue. I sort of want to take a more in-depth look at cards that otherwise dismantle the glue. And make it not actually glue anymore. They got rid of Vexing Bauble for that purpose, which we'll get to, but we'll stick to the locals. But I went 3-1 at the local, nothing crazy, but it was nice. My belief in counterbalance was restored because I can never win unless that card's actually on the table whenever I play my version of Control. But Control was at an all-time low for a while this format, and that bore out in the data that we talked about with Matt Chow in a previous episode. Check that one out, where we talked about everything that went on at all of the Eternal weekends, where Blue-White X Control, or any real version of Control deck that wasn't just a Days Wasteland shell, was effectively obsoleted from the top tables. And I was expecting in this ban announcement to get something that would sort of boost that macro type, because right now the only real viable control deck, if you can call it a control deck, is the Teferi Narset Super Friends style build.
Control build, right?
Yeah, which, for all intents and purposes is a prison deck that's using the static abilities to lock your opponent out from being able to take any game actions. And I find that the something that is meant to hold, something like Teferi being the backbone of the only viable control shell, even though it is more successful in the breakfast shells as a card because it works better as a City of Solitude, it is doing essentially something that is compromising the glue of the format in a way that feels antithetical to have an entire macro type effectively shut off because of its existence, and therefore can only play it as it's as a 4 of in that shell to boost it. It doesn't sit right with me. We'll get more into it, but I think one thing that came away from my last local or my last event before the ban announcement, going into the ban announcement and hearing what they were saying about Legacy, I just don't think that there is a clear viewpoint on the format. If free counter magic as the glue that holds it together.
Yeah.
There are too many things that dismantle the glue and therefore leave the format complete.
Incomplete.
Well, if glue holds something together,
Yeah.
I would say that the format remains in shambles on the floor because the glue is not holding it.
Fair enough. The glue is old.
Between Eldrazi and all of the decks that play Cavern of Souls, making it so that the glue can't hold the format together, and Planeswalkers with static abilities, making it so that the glue can't hold the format together, I just don't believe that statement as a reasonable one to be argued for Vexing Bauble, and then not for other cards, even if those cards don't have the same win rate or percentage of play as a quarter of the format the way Vexing Bauble did. Vexing Bauble just did it in the most egregious way. But Teferi does what Vexing Bauble does. It turns off the stack and then also replaces itself. Yeah. In the same way that Vexing Bauble, if you wanted to, could stack itself and replace itself. Like the parallels for them to say this is the glue that holds the format together and then leave cards that otherwise dismantle the glue, and particularly in a card that won an Eternal Weekend and was in dominant shells across the other two, seems like a lie, Zach. I feel like I've been lied to, and I'm happy that we can have this therapy session to get it through.
Well, now, but let's talk about the ban and restricted announcement.
Does anybody want to talk about that?
Victoria just texted me, by the way, and she said solidarity, Phil. Most likely about the coffee.
Who did?
Victoria just texted me. Yeah. It just popped up on my screen while we're recording. It said solidarity, Phil, because she's talking about she overheard what we were saying about the coffee.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, the ban and restricted announcement, Phil.
Yeah.
Obviously, Psychic Frog and Vexing Bauble are banned. That's the headline for sure, right? But there is a lot to uncover from these 7 paragraphs. And there's a lot more to uncover, actually, from the 25 paragraphs in Modern, right? We touched on this a little bit in our gut reaction video, but I thought a lot about what you said about the concept of a Modern of olden days that players have been clamoring for and that sort of thing. And that is the constant chatter I hear in Legacy is Legacy, Legacy 2014. Legacy GP New Jersey, the height of the format is, can we go back to that hallowed time, that post Treasure Cruise era, that people seem to have loved, and it's sort of a shame that in this thinking, and like I said, it's the same. Dan Musser wrote both of these, so obviously in some capacity, he was in both rooms. It might have just been one room. It could have been the exact same people. To some capacity, people are out there saying they want to return to that mid 2010s version of the format they love because they feel like that's when it was good.
So,
right?
So we can specify. I really do think that it is just pre-War of the Spark.
Well, well, that's what I was about to say. Is what do you think that's about? And it feels like pre-War of the Spark. Yeah,
I think that the turn happened at War of the Spark, where the power creep just went to the nth degree, and all the Commander products were happening. It was right before COVID hit, and then the focus on Commander and designing for Commander came in, and the level up of everything. But I think that specifically talking about how in Modern the ban list discussion, at least for this announcement, was such that yes, we hear all the feedback that you want essentially a pre-Modern Horizons era of gameplay again that lets you play with the nostalgic tools that you remember that have otherwise been obsoleted or banned previously, that may not be too powerful given the fact that they have boosted the power level to an absurd level in a crazy short amount of time. And so they let a bunch of things out of the gates that from my POV just seem nonsensical, and nonsensical in the way that the thing that they're doing of we want you to be able to play with your old toys. So Faithless Looting unbanned, they were yep, that sort of was a side hit because of Hogak sins. And so maybe it wasn't actually the initial problem, even though it was one of the ones that were caught up in the same way that Bridge from Below was. But that was all because of the Hogak issue. But then by unbanning Faithless Looting to allow people to play with Arclight, Phoenix, and a bunch of graveyard strategies again, it's just another one of those aspects where it's like, okay, the format's only going to get speed up or become more degenerate in a way that it already didn't need help with. And then same thing with Mox Opal, opening up all the artifact decks. And then it becomes, the whole problem back then when it was Mox Opal and Faithless Looting was people were like, oh, it's ships passing in the night and you just need your sideboard cards. And then they even talked about how, there are more cards that they printed nowadays, Meltdowns in Modern, Wrath of the Skies in Modern against the artifact decks. You have plenty of graveyard hate between main deckable stuff, and Ghost Vacuum is everywhere now. And okay, cool. But then it's like, wasn't the whole problem back then when those cards were legal was that it was 2 ships passing in the night and you needed your hate card in order to compete against those decks at all? And so then the format just became about who had their hate piece versus who didn't against these otherwise linear strategies that didn't care about anybody across the table. It's like, okay, that's cool. But like to reinstate these nostalgic ideas for a format, cool. But like, what's the goal? Is it just to have nostalgia for something that at the time people didn't enjoy either? And the format is just so bad that clamoring for literally anything that can make them feel something is good enough?
I mean, the players make the game, Phil.
The players make the game.
That's an important point that I think that they really touched on is like that they are the players are what make these formats good. The cards are unusable if people don't want to play the format. And I think that they saw that Modern specifically was really trending down in numbers and people were looking for reasons other formats other than Modern to play because the 5 or 6 people that were out there just grinding for, RCQs and stuff, wonderful. But like most people don't want to spend a Tuesday night playing against Energy or whatever the deck of the day is that they have to rotate their whole format just to compete against. The players are the ones that make those formats fun. I didn't play Modern because I thought that it was super fun to play Splinter Twin. I played Modern because that was where all my bros were hanging out. In fact, we met playing Modern, playing one of the worst decks ever. Like Storm in Modern is a shit passing in the night situation. But we met because the format was vibrant.
The point of them unbanning these things in Modern is to say, okay, the feedback that they got was everybody was dissatisfied with the format.
Yeah.
And so they unleashed these things that, from my POV, the choices that they unbanned aren't progressing an aspect of the format that needed help, which was the format is extremely low to the ground and games are very fast.
Yeah.
And the cards that they chose to unban were cards that further exacerbate the format getting lower to the ground and games being even faster. So they essentially gave everybody they responded to the feedback, giving people what they wanted, but the options they chose to give people what they wanted was something that's going to make the format lean harder on the problems that I feel like it already intrinsically had at a foundational level.
Yeah. Eternal Dirtals is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield.com. Moxfield is the best deck building website on the internet. You can find all of my and Phil's decks in links below, including decks from this episode. And if you do, you'll be directly supporting the channel. I can't say one way or the other because I just don't know enough about Modern right now.
And to transition these ideas over to Legacy, they didn't take any shots on goal or any swings in Legacy to make it exciting at all. But we know that they could hear the feedback because they said so in Modern and then took action.
And we've been there talking to them about the feedback in person.
We've been talking to them about it. Yeah. So, but they just gave us the very, very, very bare minimum of what was reasonable to do in this announcement, which was Frog and Bauble going, but then didn't give any tools to any part of the format that needed the help. So like the ways that we were talking about how like, yeah, it's probably Bowmasters or Dauthi Voidwalker just filling the slots that Frog initially had, and maybe Reanimator takes a dent and we just get into more of these, black creature mid-range battles because those are the best things to be doing that punish all of the other things that now we can do now that Frog is out. And then you were like, well, maybe Bolt comes back in, and it's like, okay, yeah, Bolt comes back in, but they left Nadu in, and Nadu doesn't get touched by Bolt, nor does Nomads Encore if it's not the only creature on the table. So it's like, is Bolt actually going to come back if like the best deck otherwise that didn't get touched is Nadu across its 2 different variations? I guess you could argue 3 variations. And so like, is Red really going to get a push? But like, there are tons of cards on the ban list. Like, there was talk about like mana drain all this time could come off. People were talking about survival of the fittest potentially coming off. I don't know if survival of the fittest would have worked now if they weren't going to leave Nadu unbanned, because you just tutor up your Nadu every time. But they could have taken some actions to then give some of that nostalgic POV that players want from the olden days to like refresh the format in a way that would have been really enticing. But then if you're going to do that in Modern and do it in the wrong way, it's a double-edged sword. I want them to do that in Legacy, but
you don't want them to just be like, okay, yeah, we're going to unban something stupid for no reason. The
format doesn't need to be any faster, right?
No, exactly.
It's a turn 2 format right now. The format we need tools to like let games actually develop in a meaningful way that doesn't just like require every deck to be a some amount of combo you're dead or effectively dead.
And you can't do that with unbans, Phil. That's the thing. Well, I'm saying that's the thing. You can't do that with unbans because answers are rarely the things that are banned. Questions get banned.
I get that this is a meme at this point, but like, had they unbanned Sensei's Top, and then people would have had to respond to an actual control deck. That, like, the games that would imply that we are booing a macro type of control that just does not exist right now, right? We know from the episode with Match House, statistically, it's just not a non-existent competitive macro type. So if we wanted to buoy a macro type in some way that would help slow some amount of the format down because people need to respect it, that is like in real life actually a reasonable conversation around a card coming off the ban list. Particularly if the notion that like it makes tournaments go longer is no longer tenable because Nadu's around.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
like I don't think I'm being like over like dramatic with any of this stuff, even though I'm talking really fast, because I think like all of the arguments that you could go one way or the other, and what the format needs right now, that's what it needs. The format needs to slow down. You need to buoy one of your 3 macro types that is non-existent, and the notion that like tournaments always go to time. One, they're going to go to time no matter what. Games are, that's just how the game works. It's never not been the way that way. And if taking, a ton of game actions to, absorbing clock is a thing, and we're leaving Nadu in the format, they said we're keeping an eye on it, but they didn't get rid of it. Then that argument's out the window. That's just like you can't argue.
I'm gonna wholly disagree with you on the Nadu takes too much time. It draws 8 cards. If your opponent, just like with Stasis, if your opponent does not scoop to you having the thing, like the combo on the board, doing that thing, if you're the Green Suns version of the deck, that's the one that's taking the amount of time it takes to do the thing.
Well, the rationale why some people can't scoop is because every deck is a combo deck, and so if you have a win, if you get to untap,
I get that, but like after your opponent goes and shows you that they're like going to like produce an infinite amount of tokens and stuff, they're like, stack all lands, go get all lands, stack all lands. People are making other people go through the motions for that, and that's what's taking up time. You're not
scooping. Can demonstrate a loop that is deterministic. It's
not deterministic. It's just because it's not. It doesn't need to be a deterministic loop. It just has to get to a certain point where you're like, okay, cool, I did it. It's not even that. Like, it's not even so much a loop as just like, okay, I'm going to do this, and this. That allows me to do this. And then you get to the point where you get to restart the whole thing over again. And that is a loop. But because it's not an end the game loop, like I'm going to swing in and attack, you can go wide and you can go tall with this deck. So all you need to do is get something large enough to attack and kill. And if your opponent has the ability to do that and you can't win somehow in between that, you should scoop. Stop. You're ruining the tournament for everybody. And I say this about Sensei's Divining Top too. You know as well as I do that Sensei's Divining Top was banned because of time reasons, but that's a BS reason to ban it, because the people who lost that card were not scooping in time, and the people who were playing it because it was popular didn't know how to play the deck at all. So the whole time thing is completely a moot point for me. I don't mean to attack your logic here, but I think that the whole time thing is just like a scapegoat people are playing for people who slow play.
On the topic of what you just said of attacking my point, I'm also cool to be the only person who actually thinks this way about Sensei's Top and the format at large. I just think that like I'm curious to hear your thoughts on only banning these 2 cards as opposed to banning additional things or unbanning anything. Because from my POV, they did the bare minimum and then did not display any reasonable understanding of where the format was at to actually speak to what the format needs. And I think that if like the one time where they're actually giving us where they think a pillar of the format is, which is one of the pillars of legacy. This is a quote. One of the pillars of legacy is free Countermagic. It is part of the glue that holds the format together. And they left a ton of cards that just obsolete that pillar. And now these are cards that, like, when I wanted Teferi and Cavern of Souls gone in my, like, thing that we were talking about of, like, what would you like to see gone? But at the same time, when I said that, I also knew that, like, there was 0% chance that those cards would ever get banned. I was also the only person who was, really in that camp. But if one of the pillars of legacy is free Countermagic, then cards that otherwise obsolete those things for free seem like, like the difference between what Vexing Bauble did versus what Cavern of Souls does to one of the pillars of legacy, which is free Countermagic, is, in my mind, equivalent. Like, you can put Nadu on the stack off a Cavern of Souls and the game effectively is over, the same way that you can put a Vexing Bauble in play and then cast your colorless 4-drop on turn 2. Like, the notion that, like, these 2 things would be different and not obsoleting one of the pillars that they're saying in their ban announcement. Now, are they different? Are the play experiences different? Yeah, sure, we can get into the details of that. But, like, if they're saying one of the pillars of legacy is free Countermagic and part of the glue that holds the format together as the rationale for banning Vexing Bauble, it is untenable to me to make that argument and then not also lump in the other cards that do exactly the same thing that Vexing Bauble did.
Vexing Bauble, here's gonna. I'm fully devil's advocate on this because I sort of agree with you on cards I would like to see gone for that. But as a game designer, Fairy costs 3 mana. Does it replace itself? Sure, but it can be removed from the board, like by attacking it and by killing it, like by card means. So there are at least ways to deal with that card that aren't like wait till your opponent sacrifices it, because not everyone has like artifact removal in their main deck.
Well, if I spend a removal spell on Teferi after it cantripped, it's doing the same thing than Vexing Bauble. If I use removal,
but I spent 3 mana, not 2. Like, and it's one mana now and 1 mana later. It's not like 3 mana, do the thing, and then you're like, no, I'll just remove that. And it's also getting in under Countermagic because it comes down on their first turn, exacerbating the play. But with that said, Cavern of Souls, I do agree with you with, because it does exacerbate the play, and on top of that, it's just it doesn't. You don't have to. It used to be a build around card, but like, I am the culprit here. I play a deck that just happens to have wizards in it, and all those wizards are pretty good and better if they're uncounterable. So I play a 1 of in my deck, and 2 of. I have 1 in my sideboard. I can get behind you on that, but I wanted to talk about something that you had mentioned when you were describing the level of which they took this to. You mentioned the bare minimum, and Phil, we haven't had the bare minimum for the last 4 ban announcements. So I'm happy we're getting at least the bare minimum right now.
Here's the thing, man. I understand that, like,
I know Stockholm syndrome.
This is progress, right? Like, this is this is more in depth than what it has been before. Yeah. But what it was before was entirely and wholly unacceptable.
Agreed.
So, and also, it's not a matter of like, okay, well, now they're finally doing what is a reasonable minimum. We know they can do more because they demonstrated in the same B&R that with Modern. So it's not like, oh, we need their progress, and then we have to see, do they have the capacity and ability to actually execute on that? They just proved it in the same announcement. I think, like, had this just been a legacy announcement and nothing else, this probably would have been a reasonably satisfactory announcement given what we are used to.
Yeah.
Right.
But it just looks bad because the Modern announcement looks so much better.
They showed what their capacity to actually execute on potential of, we hear your feedback and we are going to act accordingly on that and do things where the rationale for like unbanning Splinter Twin, granted, like the power creep and everything, but like, quote, enjoy the memes. Enjoy the memes is the conclusive line of the Modern unbanning for Splinter Twin, because they said this is going to prop up a singular and only like a singular deck and nothing else. And they're like, and we're cool with that.
Yeah.
Do you remember Modern was founded on the notion that you couldn't have turn 4, like the fastest kill you could have was turn 4, And then Splinter Twin was the paradigm of that.
Yeah.
And then
I mean, the format was no old boogeymen. It had two rules: no old boogeymen, fairies, blah blah blah. Those decks, right, from extended, and turn 4 is the fastest you should be able to kill somebody. And indeed, Splinter Twin was the card that was the paradigm of what that was.
They literally said in the Modern announcement, "This is a new era of Modern."
Yeah,
they're considering this a new era of Modern. Now, did they say what that means? No. But did they take a bunch of actions to display that, like, everything that they had previously said about Modern? Before, it was these are the lines, this is how we navigate the format, this is what it means. And then they did things that they never actually quantified them within those guidelines, right? They just ignored the guidelines that they set for themselves. This time they're saying, yeah, this is a new era. There are no guidelines. Here we go. Have some fun. Enjoy the memes. And they can do that. They are aware that they can do that, and they took a bunch of action. Why didn't they do that in Legacy, man?
There's something about like, what Modern is almost like 20 years ago now. It became a format. Let's go with 15, sure. But there's something a little funny to me about the concept that the format was defined on those two like tenets, is like no old boogeymen from previous formats, and no turn 4 kills. And the format, like, the monkey's paw curled on that first one, and it was like, not only will there be no old boogeymen, the format will be rotating so fast you won't recognize the decks if you don't play for 5 months, And then the turn 4 thing went right out the window as well. And that wasn't so much a monkey's paw curl. It's just like, we're going to ignore that. But the other one was just like, yeah, absolutely no old format boogeymen, because the cards that are old aren't even playable in the format anymore.
Yeah, I
just funny thought to me.
The one thing that they did in Modern was essentially the Modern announcement could have just been exactly the exact same thing that they wrote for Legacy, just swapping the word Modern for Legacy, and it would have made just as much sense and been reasonable to discuss everything that they did in the exact same way, because all the most powerful cards in Legacy and all the most powerful cards in Modern are the same cards nowadays. Outside of the enablers of old, like Ancient Tomb and Dark Red or whatever, like the otherwise like payoffs for all that's it's the same stuff. So here is a paragraph from Modern. Modern isn't the same format it was years ago. There are several cards that we banned years ago. They need an editor. Well, let's continuing this quote. This paragraph. Since then, several new sets have been released. Specifically, Modern Horizons sets have made a sizable impact on the format. As such, we've decided it's time to set free a handful of cards. We'll start. If that was just Legacy isn't the same format it was years ago. We made several bans years ago. Since then, new sets have been released. Specifically, Modern Horizons sets have made a sizable impact on the format. Like, that's. You wouldn't know that was literally evergreen with every format that Modern Horizons it touches.
I mean, we did this in the last ban announcement where we read the Modern the Modern announcement, and we just changed it with Legacy, and we were like, this would be better if they would just treat Legacy with the same deference they treated Modern with. And it's wild to me because, look, I get that, like, we're the redheaded stepchild of formats or whatever. But, like, who even plays Modern? Like, everyone's playing Pioneer. They're trying to get people back into Standard. There's not even a touchstone event for Modern. Like they throw it onto the Pro Tour every now and again for laughs, I guess.
They have an RCQ season coming up, which is I think where they decided to do a bunch of stuff. But here's the first two paragraphs of the Modern announcement. Going into this announcement, it was clear that Modern needed some help needed the most help among our competitive formats. Our previous actions in August addressed most of the glaring issues of the format, Naughty Winged Wisdom, but things haven't gotten much better. We analyzed a handful of options to try and get the format into a spot where our players would enjoy and be excited about. However, we felt more was needed. Now I'm just going to reread this thing, that way it's all clear to us. Going into this announcement, it was clear that Legacy needed the most help among our competitive formats. Our previous actions in August addressed the most glaring issue, grief. But things haven't gotten much better. We analyzed the handful of options to try and get the format into a spot that our players would enjoy and be excited about. However, we felt more was needed. Now, it is identical. It's identical. Like, the fact that I'm turned off by this announcement because the Modern announcement could have just been the Legacy announcement, but they took action in Modern and didn't in Legacy in a way that was actually helpful.
Phil, I'm going to go one step further from you, and I want to reread this thing one more time, but I'm going to make one change that you didn't. Going into this announcement, it was clear that Magic the Gathering needed help.
Yeah.
Our previous actions in August addressed the most glaring issues with the formats, but things haven't gotten much better. That is, it's a symptom of a larger problem, right? Like that. This, say what you will about one specific card, but this has been sort of the issue for years now. You could say since 2019, but I would say at least since Modern Horizons 2, where the formats are not looking like, not that they're not fun. I'm having fun playing Magic, but they're getting it's increasingly hard to get people excited about these formats without them starting off the conversation with, man, if they would just, you know,
Mhm.
like that is a place where I would like next year I would like to be in. And look, we've got 3 months. We got 3 months of this, and it's going to be better than it was before, I think. But we need to be vocal about how we feel about the format. It's obvious that the modern players are being vocal and they're getting listened to. So I think the legacy players need to be vocal as well. They need to be at, MTG Aaron, at Blake Rasmussen, at Dan Musser, when they feel that the format is not good enough, when the format could be better, when the format could be curated with much more attention. I keep saying this, and I know, downvote me if you just can't handle it, but we need people who play this format in these rooms. Wizards has told us time and time again, they do not play this format. They have one or two guys that play this format that are involved in these processes. Well, that's all the more reason to get people from the community involved. And it doesn't have to be content creators. It can be whoever. Like, I don't care. It just needs to be people who play this format. It doesn't have to be people who 5-0 leagues, It just needs to be people who care enough about this format that they have opinions. You put enough of them in a room, you're going to get a consensus on what cards are not great. We did that with the ban announcement. I'm sure if I sat there and went through the data, maybe we'll have Matt Chow on again and see if he wants to go through the data for that. And we look at that. I bet we'll get pretty close to this, but there would have been a couple more cards on that list that I think people would have gone for,
Yeah, I think all in all, I mean, this is probably going to be one of our better performing episodes, because ban episodes always do really well, and it's like everybody wants to talk about this stuff and react to this stuff because this is a moment of sizable potential, right?
Yeah.
Bans just like bans.
Everyone's eyes are open. Yeah.
Bans and unbans are just like the ways out of the otherwise feeling of being constrained and otherwise downtrodden on a thing. Like this is the sort of solution outside of new cards, but you can't plan for what kind of new cards, but you can like think about what could go and what could come off that already exists. So it just feels like there's stronger potential. Everybody likes talking about it, and the rationale and things that they're allowed to do in Modern, or that they did in Modern, because it was a one deck format and a one card format around the One Ring, that led them to unbanning 4 cards. Like, they unbanned 4 cards, one of which was never legal in the format, Green Sun Zenith.
Yeah.
Faithless Looting and Mox Opal were banned because they were in the most busted decks at the time. And Splinter Twin, which was a backbone deck that they said this is going to be the line of the format. Like, we're going to base everything else and how we otherwise structure the format around the fact that this deck is an auto win button at instant speed on turn 3 into turn 4. So that all came off. All of that gone. Right? It's a new era. And I'm like, until we
love to see a new era in Legacy.
Until we get the announcement, this is a new era in Legacy because of all of what Modern Horizons has done. I think that that's the line.
Yeah.
I don't think anything's going to be satisfactory until we get that announcement for Legacy.
What I said last time, modern solutions require modern problems, and they listened to it, and they listened to that advice for Modern.
Other way around, but yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, they listened to that advice in Modern, but modern solutions require modern problems. If the solutions are, we are printing cards like a fire hose in this format, then you have to ban them faster. Then you have to unban other cards as strategies become relevant and irrelevant, But with that said, I'd like to see your thoughts in the comment section. I'll be there like a goalie checking everyone's comments out. Please remain respectful.
Don't be respectful. I'll send the disrespect right back. Be disrespectful in there.
Be as disrespectful as you like. But with that said, don't forget, we've got that code down below for 20% off Magic Mind. Like I said, I am personally endorsing it. It's been working great for me. And with that said, everyone, have a great day. We're gonna have Reed Duke on tomorrow. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help sustain the legacy content ecosystem. Just subscribe to this channel goes a long way to reminding YouTube that people love and support this format. Now, if you really want to go the extra mile, you should think about supporting us through Patreon. Both the links for subscription and Patreon are right here. And